I find it pretty strange that Street Fighter Third Strike, a game released in 1999, looks arguably better than Street Fighter V, a game released in 2016.
Honestly hope that announcement, what the fuck, Ken? They let this into the game?
Ah, look at the top of his head!
Back before the vast majority of big budget games were made with 3D polygons, companies and artists both focused a lot of effort into creating nicely detailed and nicely animated 2D sprites. It's partly thanks to this that both sprites and 2D artwork in video games are usually associated with a retro style of gaming. While the majority of big budget games will likely continue to be made in the third dimension, games that only play in 2 dimensions are still far from niche. 2-dimensional gameplay still dominates the fighting game and platformer genres, and it's the go-to for many lower budget projects. What surprises me though, is that such a large amount of these decently budgeted games still decide to use 3D graphics over that of nice 2D sprites. And while many indie games still decide to go the pixel route, it's pretty rare that they look as nicely detailed as many of the games we had in the 90s.
This is not permissible.
For indie devs, I really can't attack them too harshly for it though. Most of them don't have the experience, staff, or man hours required to make such highly detailed 2D animation.
Here, hundreds of pretty girls, in a comfortable building all their own, cover the drawings with sheets of transparent celluloid.
However, I think it's a different reason entirely that bigger budget games have such a preference for 3D visuals. Now, don't get me wrong, there are advantages to rigging a model in 3D. In 2D animation, you basically have to start over from scratch every time you want a new frame of animation. Computer software has helped streamline this process by making it so not every single frame has to be drawn and animated manually. But even still, animation is really expensive if you want it to look nice as opposed to just some cheap Flash cartoon. It's why the French cartoon Wakfu and the Canadian cartoon Johnny Test have a clear difference in quality, despite both of them having such a heavy reliance on programs like Flash. It's also why I have such an appreciation for good-looking animation, despite not having any artistic talent myself. Unless you want to consider making a YouTube video every 6 months and art. Now, on the other hand, with 3D animation, once you create a model, you can basically do whatever you want with it without having to modify the model itself too much. This is why people who have never gone to animation school can still make relatively quick and decent fan animations in programs such as Source Filmmaker. So with these things in mind, you might think it's both cheaper and easier for companies to just produce 3D CGI over 2D animation, but I really don't think this is the case. At least, not for decently budgeted projects that really want to have nice looking visuals. After all, creating lifelike 3D visuals is going to cost a company a lot of money. And on top of that, nice 3D polygons are harder for a computer to render. This means you need to spend more time optimizing your game so it'll run well on modern systems. Besides, if 3D animation really was the cheaper and easier choice, then you'd expect Disney movies to be cheaper to make after they decided to create all their movies in CGI. And that definitely hasn't been the case, even if you take inflation into account. The reason I think computer-generated 3D graphics dominate both big-budget games and movies is more of a cultural reason than one of cost or time. Many games that don't have the Western appeal that Street Fighter or Injustice have gotten away with having some pretty nice 2D animation. Many of these games called anime fighters are pretty niche, and because of that, appeal mainly to a majority Japanese audience. Similarly, the popular French MMO Wakfu, which is not surprisingly played mostly by French people, also uses nice 2D animation. So it seems to me that companies think for their game to not be seen as retro or outdated, they have to have their games be rendered with 3D polygons if they plan on selling their games in America. This parallels the current state of the American animation industry, which is almost exclusively CGI, despite that in other countries, we can see 2D animated films make it into theaters and do quite well too. I know this is pretty subjective, but I don't think 2D animation looks outdated or less impressive than 3D CGI. Actually, I don't even find the best CGI to be as impressive as well-drawn animation.
I feel absolutely calm and in a normal state. This is what he writes 6 weeks before he's dead.
As is common knowledge, using CGI is one of the easiest ways to date your product. I'm not going to say that the original Toy Story looks bad today, but it definitely hasn't aged nearly as well as Disney's other classics. Likewise, Street Fighter 4 is already showing its age despite only being a generation old, while King of Fighters 14 looks just as good as it did on release. Oh, and as an extreme side tangent, stop-motion animation is completely underutilized, despite that it's been used amazingly in the past. The original Doom Demons, for example, were renders from clay replicas. So, does this mean I hate all CGI? No, of course not. Actually, there are many techniques that combine both 2D and 3D animation to make what I think are some pretty nice looking things. Computer-generated graphics are really just another tool for an artist to use. The only issue I have with it is that for big-budget Western projects, it's usually the only tool they're willing to use.
When I came to Disney, one of my first impressions about being here was that there was drawing everywhere. There's a deep legacy of it being in the final product, right up there on the screen, that goes back, to the very beginning. I feel that we're definitely in a golden age right now of CG, where there's this explosion of content. It's beautiful color and appeal, and characters are so expressive and alive. But as good as that is, there's part of me that believes that kind of stylized photorealism, it can't be the only way that computer animation can look. There's got to be other ways.
48 hours ago, we found something.
America's CGI obsession has gotten to the point to where when Hollywood decided to make a remake, or I guess a remake, of the classic film The Thing, they decided to use CGI to represent the iconic monster. Despite that the 80s film is nearly 30 years older than its modern remake, thanks to its use of practical effects, the 80s monster actually looks more real than its modern reimagining.
You gotta be fucking kidding.
It's stuff like this that makes me wonder how many games could have looked if publishers and designers were willing to consider alternatives to polygons. Let's take Injustice for example. It's a series that's sort of infamous for its ugly and unfaithful renders of DC comic book characters. If Warner Brothers decided to use more traditional animation, we could have gotten a game that more closely resembles the comics it was based on. The idea that the game might have looked as good or as faithful as some of DC's animated series greatly upsets me. There has to be some bizarro world somewhere where the game exists, it just has to. So here's the thing, it's not like 2D animation has to look like pixel art ripped right out from the 90s. After all, technology has advanced. Developers now have the ability to make 2D animated games look better than they ever did before. We are now at a point where 2D animation can look indistinguishable from that of the hand-drawn animation you would see on TV or even film. And with resolutions that are so high, you don't even have to see the pixelation. So I know what many people might be thinking. 2D animation simply doesn't have big enough appeal to justify making it anymore. So why would publishers even bother? Now the thing is, I don't think this is the case at all.
Well, Cuphead and his pal Mugman, they like to roll the dice.
2017's Cuphead is an American release game. It isn't an anime fighter marketing itself primarily to Japanese anime fans, or a French MMO marketing itself mostly to French people. Cuphead is an American-made game, made with the West as its main demographic, based on classic American Fletcher-style animation. And the best part is, the game didn't just do well, it did phenomenal, selling over 2 million copies in just its first few months. Definitely not bad for a relatively low-budget game, only available on 2 platforms. Cuphead is clearly a good-looking game. I don't even have to explain it. You can see for yourself, and that dedication to well-drawn 2D visuals paid off big time. I only hope that other companies decide to take notice. Because if there's only one thing this industry is good at, it's copying an idea that sold well.
When you master a medium, in the old days, if you were a master painter, then you did your masterpiece. Well, this is an old-fashioned that I've mastered this medium at last. And I'm going to do a masterpiece, I hope.
You know, there's something about that hand of the artist that I really admired so much. It was so expressive and it can tell such great emotion and with such simplicity.
Animation, especially good hand-drawn animation, is hard work. At the end of the day, I'm just happy knowing there are still many people out there that appreciate it, just as much as I do.
What's driving you to produce this masterpiece? Quest for excellence.